Welcome to another episode of the Lead Lamp podcast. This week, we are going to be talking with Tyler. He's our AdWords and SEO specialist. But we're going to go over a brief overview of what you can do to your websites for some basic SEO. So you probably have a website, started your small business website, maybe you're using one of many different platforms, but there's a list of very basic things that you can get started on with your website. We're going to have Tyler. I'm going to run down through some topics and have Tyler kind of explain us through the process of just getting your website ready to be found on Google or any other search engine.
Yep, perfect.
So just want to kick it off from the beginning here?
Yeah.
All right, so we have a pretty basic list. We're going to go through like the top, we'll call them the top 10s. There might be a few more. But basically give us a quick walkthrough of like, what is SEO?
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a lot of mystical magic around SEO and it's really not. So kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, I mean, basically top level SEO, search engine optimization, why it's important. If you look at any Google Analytics for any business, more often than not, the SEO content or organic keywords that they rank for is the number one traffic source. The other benefit of that is you're not paying for that traffic. You're ranking for those keywords, hopefully on page one. Everybody wants to be on page one, list one or item one. But you can't always do that.
Mm-hmm.
So over time, you look for keywords, look for topics. The one thing I always just demystify, as you were saying with SEO, it kind of gets a little bit metaphysical, or it almost seems like it can be at times, is just naturally your business is going to be in a certain industry, category, market. So you don't have to worry about going too deep into that because it's naturally just going to be there. The topics on the products or service you offer, they're naturally going to be on that website. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I say don't overthink SEO, but then just focusing content around those products and services you offer should naturally occur. Mm-hmm. But then over time, after you just start ranking for those basic product services that you offer within whatever product market industry that you're in, that's where you can start to dig a little bit deeper, use platforms like SEMrush or Ahrefs to find those keywords, to start optimizing a little bit deeper, whether it be, as you mentioned earlier, high level on that website, meta tags, title tags, to help index for Google, to know what your site is, if there is a local component to it, mm-hmm. Regional businesses, brick and mortar. You want to focus on those local places that your products or services are offer. If you're an e-commerce site across the internet, you don't have to worry about that as much because you're going to look at the higher level keywords that people are searching for.
Right. So let's back it up.
Yeah.
So let's pretend we'll pick a random business, flower shop, local flower shop. Mm-hmm. I just started my flower shop website. Yep. What are some things that I should do high level, very easy just to get out of the gate? I have a few pages. I listed my services, fresh cut flowers. Yep. What are some things I should be doing when you're telling me, keywords and content, and I'm trying to find, I'm trying to rank in Smithsville for flowers. Yep.
So depending on what site platform you're working with, some of the templated sites, Wix, Squarespace and stuff like that, they have, even WordPress, they have plugins and stuff that to kind of help you guide you through that SEO, which is nice. So at least you want to do the main site tag, at least to get that going. And again, if you are a local business to a regional area, make sure to include that. That way, when somebody starts searching flower shops near me, over time, when Google starts indexing your site, it'll know that if somebody types in flower shops near me, whatever that town is that you're servicing, that it will start showing up.
Yeah. Now, is it smart enough to know? I'm just picking up a random town named Smithville. Yeah. If I'm talking about the town of Smithville on my website, but I'm not saying near me, is Google smart enough over time to learn where those town names are and know where that person's searching from?
So that's a good point. The couple things you can do on top of that to make sure Google knows that you're in that town of Smithville. have your address on your website.
Mhm.
Another one to optimize is have a Google Maps implemented on that. And again, a lot of these websites offer a plugin where you can implement the Google Maps on there. So
Mhm.
again, it helps people find directions whenever they're looking for that business. But then even a step beyond that is making sure you have a Google My Business.
Mhm.
It's something we know a lot in certain practices or regional offices we deal with internally, but that's
Yeah.
from our client's standpoint.
I'm gonna have you put a pin in Google My Business because we're gonna get down to that.
We could, that could be a whole topic
So-
in itself. Yep.
Just to start off that first list,
Mhm.
basically, to summarize, someone's on the roof. To summarize, we want to write that content for what our basic services are or products.
Yep.
And then if you are local, include some of those town names, include some local
Yep.
things. Some of the plugins that we talk about, I know specifically the one we use a lot is called Yoast.
Yep.
There's a free version for most of these. So we'll try to include some links in our show notes for some of these free plugins, like the Google Maps one and the Yoast thing. They're very intuitive actually. And they give you like a tutorial on what to do. And they give you like a red, orange, green status. So it's pretty easy to tell whenever you're hitting the mark and what they think you should be ranking or putting in for content.
Yep. Exactly.
So let's get back onto the higher level here.
Yep.
You're starting to rank.
Mhm.
You've already covered on the importance. People are going to be able to find your business when you're doing well. But explain how to measure that click through. So there's a term that runs around there. And if you've worked with an SEO company in the past, you probably hear of click through rate. So explain what the click through rate is, because it's great to rank, but if you're not getting clicks.
Yeah. So you could get impressions all day, but that could be another place that, like, again, as you said, you're starting to rank, but to really optimize, that's something to look in, a little bit deeper, is if you're not getting the click-through rate. So maybe that's the content you're writing, maybe not including or being clear in the products or services you're offering.
So you could be ranking high for a flower shop, but my customers are searching for that Valentine's Day rose special, and they're just seeing my brand name, and it's really not the title and the description in the search engine ranking. It's not drawing you in to click on my listing.
Or even to tie in what we said earlier with Google My Business, maybe the other one has claimed their profile and has a ton of reviews. And me as a customer, I look at that at times. Oh, this other flower shop may have 100 customers and a 5-star review. Yeah, and then this one, your business maybe doesn't have the listing, or maybe Google generated it and you don't have it claimed, so you haven't been pushing those reviews. So again, you're seeing the impressions, you're ranking high, but the other one just has a little bit better of a presence.
Right. Or God forbid, we've seen this, I'm sure you've seen this too before, is there's businesses that really knock it out of the park with their Google business ranking, but then there's Google business listings. Sorry, I said ranking, I meant listing. Yeah. There's other businesses we've seen through our history of doing this where they don't claim it, and there's like a couple bad reviews out there. They're not responding to them. It doesn't mean they're a bad business. It just means they haven't properly managed their Google My Business listing. So that can all affect in the number of customers you're seeing coming in, and you might not even realize it's out there. Especially, and I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but you might not even have a website, but Google auto-generated your business listing, and you get 1 or 2 bad reviews on there, not managed. Like, it really could put a black eye on your your business, and you didn't even. It might have just been one bad experience.
Yep, exactly. So. And you may have mitigated that. Maybe they've stopped back in and you took care of them.
But no one knows that.
Yeah, and they didn't go back and do a follow-up review or listing. So again, there's all those things that tie into SEO. It's such a big picture thing. Sometimes it's hard to miss some of the fine details.
So we've covered 2 things. We've covered the importance of ranking high and how, basically what the search engine is looking for initially. And we've covered the Google My Business, which ties together. But what's the basic mechanism behind the search engine? So you're writing your content, you're trying to get your town name or your products in there. You're entering your information on the Google My Business page, but how does that all tie together for the search engine? Like, how's it work?
Yeah. So one thing I just want to mention, and I'll tie into that. So with the keywords, I always say, like, the very basic overview of SEO is trying to find keywords or products and services. If maybe you fill a market void in your local town. So say maybe there wasn't a flower shop, or there was a flower shop that went out of business, and you're like, man, there's still a product need for this in this local Smithville market. I'm going to do the flower shop. You also can look behind the scenes and see there was a ton of searches for flower shop, Smithville, whatever, state. So I always say the basics of SEO is high search volume, low competition. That's the holy grail. If it's a keyword, if it's a product or service that fills a market void,
especially if it's the more unique,
yes,
the better.
Yep.
And actually, some industries just lend themselves to lower competition.
Yep.
There might be 1,000 mechanics in a small area. I'm over exaggerating.
Yeah.
There might be a dozen mechanics in a small town, but none of them have a website.
Yep.
And they're not creating that content. So if you're a mechanic or a flower shop in a smaller local region and you really knock it out of the park with content, there's a low competition because they're not all online.
Yep.
High value.
Yep.
And high ability to rank.
Yeah. So again, it's like after, what we talked about and discussed earlier, once you're starting to get that, and the other thing to mention with SEO is it's a long game. There are opportunities, and we've discussed that before, where you can just find that holy grail of
there's
keyword.
Like an aura around it.
Yeah. It's like, oh my gosh,
You know.
you look at something, and there's times where we've discussed instances where you get so excited because you found that little niche or a topic or a subject that nobody was writing content. Again, there was high search volume, low competition, or the content that was out there on the website, on page SEO, videos or whatever, it just wasn't SEO optimized. So it was out there, but Google wasn't indexing it and putting it top of mind. So if you find that, there's been times where I've written a blog, posted a video, and optimized it for search. Again, because we have to remember Google, #1 search engine, YouTube, #2. YouTube is owned by Google, an Alphabet company. So if you can optimize those pieces of content and you can find that holy grail and start ranking for a keyword or a search term and start driving that organic traffic, that's ideal over time, because again, that's free traffic. Hopefully, again, law of averages and what we talked about earlier with the click-through rate, the more traffic and organic traffic you're getting to your site over time, the click-through rate should increase. Hopefully some type of conversion off of that too, but whatever product service you're offering, hopefully turn into a customer.
Right. So let's get back onto that.
Yeah.
First question is, you do your content, you're doing your business listing. Google, how does Google find the site, and how is it indexing that and ranking it? So kind of go over the basic mechanics of it's now gotten the attention of the search engines, and then what happens?
Yeah.
It'll scan and kind of go through all that.
Yeah, that's where a lot of the back end technical SEO goes. And there's a lot of times where I'll lean on you and Ben, another member of our team, behind the scenes stuff. Again, I'm aware of it, but again, there's even some deeper stuff you can do. A lot of the basics is having your site on Google Search Console. Again, that helps tell, because there might be some content on your website that you don't want Google to look at or just pass over. And then that's
kind of like a login page.
Exactly.
So, and I can kind of take over from some of that.
Yeah,
so,
if you will. Yep.
Google Search Console, which he mentioned, is kind of like Google My Business, but it's kind of it's like the under the hood version of your website. You can submit a sitemap. We won't go into that today. To Google, but Yoast actually, it's a plugin we mentioned earlier, helps you make that sitemap and enter that link to the sitemap into Google Search Console. And that's kind of the signal for, you can't make Google crawl your website and rank it, but that's kind of the signal to tell Google, hey, this is a new website, or hey, we made a lot of updates to this website. And the basic key behind that is Google is trying to, not just Google, I'm picking on Google, but all these search engines are trying to provide the most relevant content for that person who's searching. So that the customer is actually the person searching who needs that information. So going back to the flower shop example, Google wants to provide me, who I'm looking for last minute flowers to apologize to my wife. They want to provide me the best result for the flower shop near me. So Google will then take the information you provided them, telling them about your website, do a crawl or basically a scan of what's on your website, decipher what that content's about, and provide that hopefully valuable content to the person that's searching for it nearby or online, whether it's a product or e-commerce site. It'll index or rank it's kind of a, indexing is getting on the Google search engine. Ranking is how basically Google's vote on how great your content is, but it'll rank and index that content when it appears on the search engine results page based on how much quality and the experience that person's going to get out of that search query, the question they ask.
Yep.
So it's trying to provide the best answer for the query that person submitted.
Yeah. And you just brought up a topic that it's important to mention with SEO is also something we discussed before, is getting backlinks from other trusted websites. That's huge in Google's mind. And essentially the best way to describe that, to make it easily digestible and understandable to somebody who's not in the thick of the SEO world is essentially just a word of mouth reference. So if you were to get a job and say, hey, here's a list of my references, checking me out, I'm legit, I'm not running in a scam or a con. It's just Google's way of doing that. And the more links that you can have from maybe a trusted website, another one in the industry, relevant content, people trusting back and say, hey, this is a reputable site.
Yeah.
They know what they're talking about. It's not a scam.
Right. It's a vote.
Yes, exactly.
It's, it's a reference, like you said, on a resume, or it's your site's resume in a sense. It's me I have a website. Tyler has a website. I really like the content Tyler's creating, and I believe in it. And I think it's great for my audience. So I'm going to put a link from my site to Tyler's site.
Yep.
It's not, though. Backlinking is not buying links.
Yeah.
Kind of in the old days of SEO, you could go and buy a bunch of links, but now I think most people realize that that's frowned upon.
Yep.
In the search engine's eyes, you'll get a major slap on the wrist for that one. They'll catch you eventually.
Yep.
And they still exist. Link farms exist. You'll get some fishy emails sometimes asking for backlinking. That's not backlinking.
Yeah.
And Tyler can chime in as well, but when you're writing quality content and you're putting it out on your website, the backlinking will also come organically.
Yes.
So you will get backlinks from, other industry sites, local sites, especially if you're a local business. There are ways to get backlinks through business directories, your chambers of commerce, things like that, where you're networking with other businesses and you're kind of forming those links with organizations and stuff. You don't need to go out and email 10,000 other websites to exchange backlinks. In fact, that's sometimes is frowned upon too.
Yeah. Another thing to mention too, I've seen it happen, is sharing your content. So say you do a blog or a video and linking that on social, you have to remember some of the top websites online. And again, that's in Google's eyes good. Facebook, Instagram, even nowadays TikTok, people even use that as a search. So there's a lot of times you'll even see it. Anybody can think about this. I always use a reference of like how to change the oil in my XYZ car.
Right.
And then seeing those videos popping up as a top, and Google will even segment that out. So there's a little bit, after we do some of the high level website, as we get thicker down in the weeds over time, we're talking months, years, as you're expanding upon that content and to optimize for SEO. Making a video, hey, here's how to change the oil if you're a local mechanic. Maybe if you're a flower shop, here's how to arrange some flowers. Also, you're providing value to your customer. At the end of the day, you're hopefully doing beautiful arrangements yourself.
So when you're doing we'll go back to the flower shop example. That could be a great way for the flower shop, to provide value to their current customers. So you could say, hey, after you buy those flowers for your wife, here's like 4 ways to keep them alive and prettier longer. Yep. And then, like you said, you could segment that video out, and we can use that for, everyone's probably seen it now on YouTube. There's a little bar that has like the breakpoints of what's the subject is changing. We'll cover that in a whole different thing, but you can have value in those videos that not only provides value to your current customers, but then later when people are searching for flowers or tips on their flowers, they're going to find your business through media then, not just content that's written on your website. Yeah.
And I've seen it a lot with YouTube videos. If the content creator or business doesn't chapter or segment out those videos themselves, Google will sometimes go in, or YouTube will sometimes go in and chapter those out. a hack I learned is go in there and do that yourself, and use the tools like SEMrush or Ahrefs to find those search queries. You can even just do it sometimes with on Google. If you scroll down enough, they'll have their suggested topics.
Here's
of
what
like,
other people
what are they
search.
searching for, and using those, because if there's a reason why Google's putting those into the search results page, there's a good chance they're some of the higher ranked or potential rank for, and using those as the chapters. So like, your example of how to keep the flowers fresher longer. Maybe it's cutting. I don't know if this is true. I've always heard of cutting the stems at an angle, or certain products you can put in the water to help the longevity. But those could be those chapters segmented out. So when somebody does say that, now Google is indexing that YouTube video and saying, here's how to do it. And then they're like, this flower shop, let me check them out. Even better when they're local. But again, maybe you do shipment and you can ship across country or whatever. And again, all ways to get organic traffic.
One of the things I've also noticed is you talk about the little section that expands. It says here, what other users have searched.
Yes.
Sometimes it changes titles of what that section's called.
Yep.
But oftentimes the questions that are in there are also, you can find some gems in there as far as what you were talking about earlier with low search volume.
Yep.
I'm sorry, high search volume, low competition. Not oftentimes we've seen that Google's putting questions in there that are related to your search, but there's not a lot of things being written on that. And you can usually pick up some other search traffic if you try to tailor some of those pieces of content that you're writing for that. And sometimes you'll also find it might not be completely related to that original topic. So it could be, back to the flowers example, mixing that little packet of whatever plant food they put in there when you buy them. And it also has a question in there about, or has a query in there that someone searched about, changing the water. Should I change the water in my flowers? That might not be related to what your original piece of content was, but that could spark another idea for you to write another brand new piece of content or create a new video for that. And it might spin off other pieces of content for you to write.
Yeah. And to piggyback on that, I highly suggest using just the basic tools, because I understand small businesses, maybe it's a little expensive to use a SEMrush or Ahrefs. I know Ahrefs, I don't want to say prices out, but
Search Console works great for some of that.
There's some free tools, but I can say definitively without doubt, when I've done keyword research 2 times recently, when I find out keyword topics or search queries or phrases or long tail keyword phrases, I'll do the research and I'll highlight things I want to include in a blog or a piece of content that we want to create coming up. I'll go into Google, search that topic just to see what other content's out there. And I'll see those keywords that I see, high search volume, low competition, and those will be the suggested topics. So again, if you don't want to put out a couple $100 or $1,000 depending on what platform.
Gives it to you on a silver platter, and they right in front of your eyes the whole time, and you didn't even realize it.
Hidden it in plain sight, and it's just like, hey, start with those topics. Don't spend a ton of extra money if your business can't afford it and you don't want to. Those are those low hanging fruits that you can go after. Blog content, on page content, or videos, whatever you can do.
All right, let's go on to. We're going to switch topics. We really kind of spiraled off of how search engines work.
Gosh, I know.
But we covered the basics of it. They're looking for quality content that answers. They're looking for answers to their users' questions. So when you're searching for questions, you're searching for answers to your question. We've all done it. You want to find the most direct and higher quality answer to your question. So the more you can answer for your customers' questions and the more thoroughly you can answer them, that's in Google's eyes going to be the best content to serve the customer to answer that question.
Absolutely.
That's kind of the very baseline of how the search engines work. They want to deliver the answer to the question. Oops. Now let's kind of quickly glance over what you can do from some 3 basics for on-page SEO. So you got your title tag, you have your meta description, and your header tags. So header tags and title tags, sometimes I've seen some people get confused on them, but let's just briefly cover all 3 of them. And it's something that most people can do on their own.
So again, a lot of those tools, depending on what website platform you're using, they'll make it pretty obvious where those title tags,
Yoast.
header tags.
We'll use Yoast as an example. They'll tell you what to do.
And again, those are again, when you look at the code and behind the scenes in the Search Console, that's where you can include those product services, the flower shop example that we've been talking about. Again, even if it's a local brick and mortar that you want to include that's where you would do flower shop and then town name Smithville.
You're talking about in the title.
Yes, or anywhere that you can really
Okay.
implement that.
Okay.
Again, help ranking. Unless you have any additional things to say off that.
Just like coming up a level and explaining like what is the title tag, what is the meta description, and what is the header. Like what are your headers?
Gotcha.
H1s, H2s, H3s. So we'll see that in site editors, kind of just on a high level explain, what are all three of those? Like what do they do?
As far as I know, it's more the technical back end stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it is showing the keywords implemented on that site. So as Google searches and crawls, it can help tell what that content's about.
Right.
And then below that, you'll expand upon that content. And there's been times where, again, it's important to make sure certain headers of topics are labeled as H1 or H2, because then as you expand upon that, there's another opportunity on the SERP, search engine result page, to have a featured snippet. I know there's been times where I've gotten content listed as a featured search engine result snippet. It's a holy grail. Is whether it's bullet points or a listicle, top 10 things to have. Images, image package. Those are really cool, and it's exciting to see when you can get those topics at rank. But a lot of that ties back into those keywords, search phrases, queries that we were talking about. Even as you just search maybe a general topic, like a flower shop, or like we said. But if there's any way of the top 5 roses or other things that you can say, colors of roses, most popular colors of roses, or anything you can do around that then you can get featured on that to again do that. Again, those H1 tags are just, again, without getting too nerdy and too high level or too.
A good way to explain it is when you read a newspaper.
Yes.
If you look at a newspaper and you look at the front page of the newspaper, you have your big headlines. You have, and then as you get farther into the newspaper, they get smaller, and each section kind of goes that same way. So you got sports, local, national, whatever. They all have their large headlines. Those are the ones that the newspaper is trying to get you to draw into that they're drawing you in. So your H1s, that's your big headlines.
Yes.
Those are the ones, flower shop, Smithville. Your H2s might be, best flowers for Valentine's Day.
Yes.
And they're trying to draw you deeper into that. H5, I don't know if I use an H5, but they're out there. Those are more considered like your sub headlines. So if you're thinking of a newspaper, your article will then break to the second page or page 5, and then you'll see some smaller ones like if it's in a police investigation, it might be something deeper in there about continued on page 5. Page 5, it'll say, here's what the local sheriff had to say in his summary. But it's just those headlines are drawing you deeper into that article. H1 being the most heavily weighted. So you don't want to keyword stuff, but you want to try to include something that reads well for the user. You don't want it to sound robotic, but then at the same time, you want to try to squeeze a few of those keywords that you're trying to rank for into those H1s. And it's same with your title. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
The title tag's different. So your title tag is hopefully, because sometimes sometimes the search engines will go rogue and show something else. But your headers, that's on your website. Your title tags and your meta description, that is what you're seeing when you're doing your search for local shop for Valentine's Day flowers. When the search engine's results page shows up, which is where you hopefully are ranked number 1, the meta tag, the meta description and the title tag, you're entering that on your website to try to tell Google, here's what I want to show my customers when they search for my product or service. It's kind of that's your first impression. You're trying to get that. And I say sometimes Google goes rogue because I'm sure you've seen it too, where Google will sometimes ignore your meta description or your title tag, and it will put in something else because it's trying to, your page might be relevant, but what they're searching, Google might have found another part of your content that was more relevant, and they'll completely swap out your meta description for something you didn't even want.
Yeah.
But you can guide Google with those title tags and meta descriptions.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you switched, because I like that example of a newspaper. That's a great description. I always like to try and find analogies and stuff, so I'll have to use that going forward too. It's just a great way to highlight what those different tags are. I was going a little bit too deep and technical in the weeds, but no, I like that. And thank you for providing that example, because it is a good way, again, behind the scenes of, telling Google what you're for. And like you said, sometimes they will go rogue and they'll say, actually, we like this, depending on certain content. And then the hierarchy of that content, if you think about it for the H1, H2 tags, is where you can segment off into different content, but ultimately it's filtering back up in that hierarchy of keyword of your main product or service that you're offering on your website or locally.
And when I say go rogue, it's still using content from your website.
Exactly.
So a good example would be if you owned a garage, you work on cars, you really wanted to talk about oil changes on that page, and maybe on your homepage you have an oil change special. You want to throw that in the meta tags and title and your description of your website. You might try to be finding my garage, but you really need your transmission fixed.
Yeah.
And somewhere else on my homepage, I have a blurb about we're the best high quality transmission shop in the area.
Yeah.
Well, Google's going to go, okay, well, this garage is really ranking well, and it is a good fit for what this person's searching, but they're looking for transmission work, not what that site's telling me about the oil changes and whatnot. It'll grab other snippets from that website and try to show the most relevant content. So title tags and meta descriptions aren't always an exact science. It's not always going to show exactly what you type in it, but it is a good guideline for like the 80-20 rule. It's going to cover 80% of what people are searching for that page.
Exactly.
All right. Let's go into the relationship between writing good content. We kind of covered it briefly, but content marketing and SEO. So there's kind of two things. One, writing good content for people once they get on the site kind of sucks them in and keeps them there. And two, how does that relate to your rankings? So getting people on the site and keeping them there.
Yeah.
Does that help you climb through the rankings?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of different stuff, because over time you're going to build, a database, if you will, on your website of relevant content, again, around your products or services, to hopefully answer questions. And sometimes you don't always need a hard ask or sell in a piece of content. I think just over time, kind of being the authority of certain topics or industries is good.
It becomes a magnet.
Exactly. Yep. A lead magnet. And hopefully they'll click around, and then you can have internal links to other blog topics, and hopefully they're starting to click around. You're starting to answer like, man, this flower shop, since we're going with that example, really knows what they're talking about. Again, you start to build that relationship with your customer over time, and it's not even a personal. That way, when they come into the store, you kind of already have a rapport with them. But then also you're implementing those keywords of some of the research you were doing earlier. Again, if you're not using a platform to do that keyword research, even like we said earlier, just using some of those search terms that you're finding on a results page of a certain keyword that you want to rank for, or just see an opportunity. Maybe there's a new trend. I've seen that a lot in the industry. You're not sure if it's just a trendy thing that you want to put content out there, because again, as a trend, hate it or love the trend.
Are you going to ride the bubble for?
Yeah, exactly. You're at least going to ride it, but then sometimes those short-term trends become long-term things within a market or industry. So it's good to get that content out there first, because then over time, as that search volume is high, competition is low, your blog article or your content is going to show up higher
at the beginning of that bell curve.
Exactly. And then over time, as more people continue to search for it, it's not just a trendy thing. This is actually now part of this market and industry. It's going to continue to show up, because now you have 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. And then again, that ties into what we were talking about earlier. Sometimes the SEO is that long game. Yeah, you might find a quick hitter that you can rank high.
It's a tortoise in the hare.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it is. It truly is. So,
and we've even seen articles where we wrote them 2-3 years ago, and they got traffic. You know, they weren't killing it, but they weren't, they weren't suffering and not getting anything. And then all of a sudden, I know Joe and I have done content in the past where a year or two later, all of a sudden it just pops off and it's getting searched like crazy. And it's always the ones that you least expect.
Yes.
It's the one that you didn't spend a lot of time on. And you're like, why is that?
Yep.
So it's not always an exact science either. A lot of it just has to do with like social, economic things. You know, you might have written something. A really good example of this was, and I have something I want to circle back to, but a really good example of this was in a previous job, or previous life, we were doing a lot of things about green energy. This was like the late 2000s, early 2010s. And then green energy just popped off, you know, solar, everything like that. And then the search volume for those topics, whenever like the solar tax credits were a big thing, if you were writing about that 3 or 4 years before that took off and you had the foresight to know this was coming, you know, reap the benefits of that. But if you were late to the game, those people that had already had that content for a while, they were just miles ahead of you. And that kind of goes back to tying it back to your customer experience with content. So content marketing, a lot of people get afraid of it because they think they have to write for hours and hours and hours. But if you have a business and you're passionate about your business, so we're really picking on this flower shop today. But say everyone in the area, we're going to make up a scenario. It's an old trusted local business and they were the keystone in the area for their service, whether it be flower shops or it's a mechanic or it's that guy just knows how to fix everyone's air conditioner. And everyone trusts him. When you're writing your content, the people that have those types of businesses usually knock it out of the park when they do this properly, because you're going to be referred to me because I'm the best in the area at fixing air conditioners. You know, Brett really knows what he's doing. You got to go to him. Well, it's always that guy that can answer any question in a way that the homeowner or the customer just understands it. Taking that same approach and writing your content that way is the best way to do it. So with content marketing, we always kind of tell our customers, if you can write out a list of all of your FAQs, if you have 10 of them, frequently asked questions, or you have 20 or 100, pick those questions that people always ask you and people in the area know, like, that's the guy to talk to, or that's the person to talk to for that answer. Write those out, build out that content, because not only are you going to be showing up in search engines for it, but from a content marketing standpoint, you can send your emails to your customers. Hey, I got an answer for that. I'll have my team send that to you. Your customers will then know, not only are you a resource when you're there in person with them, but now their website is just full of those answers. And you're going to find people in your area or even nationally, this works for national and local searches, that you're just that library of what was all up here. Now it's on your website and people can just swarm to it. There is someone dancing on the roof. But yeah, you become that resource. So the people in your industry who have it up here, those are the people who you want to answer your FAQs. You might have to rewrite some of it because they get too technical, but that's like a really good resource for content marketing. And then when you connect that to the SEO side, when Google sees that kind of content being put on a website for a topic, they eat it up. And the more and more you put that out there, Google's going to know, hey, Tyler's site on drone photography he's just putting it out there and he's putting it out there. And every time Google comes back to recrawl your website, there's more. So they get hungrier. And the idea is you don't have to do it every day. But if you're constantly just putting out that helpful content, quality content, Google's going to get hungrier and want more from you. So
another thing I want to piggyback on that, you got me thinking of a topic. I worked in a past life and there was e-commerce stuff. So I would always pester the gentleman who dealt with our customer inquiries, warranties, returns, all that stuff. If they were just fielding questions, hey, I bought this product, I'm having this issue. How does this work? I told them, tell me all the time when you have these issues, because that's the perfect content. If you're hearing this question constantly, or even we had a retail store, I said, I would ask the people, I'd go down to the counter and say, hey, what are people asking for? Is there a certain topic? Is there a new trend in the market that people are asking a lot of questions about? Is there certain things? And I would just pick their guys' brains and saying, all right, hey, what is there? If it wasn't something I wasn't knowledgeable about, I would just go on that same thing. Hey, find those people that are super knowledgeable of it. They don't maybe write the best or
right. You might not want them writing.
Yeah, you don't want them to write because they don't write well.
Tell you exactly what needs to be done.
What topics I want to include. Right. Another one I always take a look at too, because we can all do it, is looking into the comment sections of social media or YouTube video. It might not even be your video. It might be a competitor's video. And if there's a certain trend or topic that people are asking questions about,
they missed an answer to something.
Exactly. Right. And then that could be a piece of content to unlock your business. And again, comments also taken with a grain of salt. There should be a disclaimer on that, because a lot of people get nasty on social. But there's also potential opportunities there when you see, hey, a lot of people are asking this same question on a piece of content. Hey, that's something I need to do. And also, a little selfishly, it saves you time from constantly answering it. Similar to the FAQ page, you don't have to constantly send it. You can send out a link to that.
Yeah.
And so again, it all works holistically, big picture.
Right. So content marketing, whether you're emailing it and you're doing all of that, harness that on your website, because your search engine results are going to benefit from that as well. And just to pin that one last thing with that, if you don't know who that person is in your organization, like just go on a hunt, because someone in your company is facing the customer, or they are seeing these queries or questions constantly in person or on the phone. And you can probably make their lives a little easier too, if they can point someone who's calling in or whatever to something on your website. Hey, here's the answers. I'll walk you through it here, but if you need any help, I'm going to send you a link as well. So there's a huge resource somewhere within your organization. It might be yourself. It might be the customer service people, someone at the front counter. Somewhere in your organization, there's someone that's getting bombarded with questions. And they can be a huge resource for content. And search engines love it, because the same questions they're getting, there's probably 10 times the amount that are asking that question on the search engine.
Exactly.
So, all right, we've covered a lot there.
Yes, lots of digest.
Let's just wrap up with what are some key things to monitor on your website? So we're going to pretend everyone has Google Analytics installed on their website. Give me like the real quick elevator's pitch on or speech on I have analytics installed, but I don't know what to start with. Like, what's the first basic one or two things that people can look at on Google Analytics when they first get into it?
There's one thing I would always look at is there's traffic to the website, and there's even a little drop down. You do source medium, and then campaign. If there was a certain campaign and you had a custom URL, you wanted to see what was it, the email, was it the social post? Because it was that piece of content we created, or video or blog, and then we emailed it out. We did it on social.
Did it come from MailChimp? Or did it come from Facebook?
Exactly. And also it tells what your customers like more often than not. Oh, was it reading the blog on email and the open rate and all that stuff? And you can digest, oh, my customers more prefer content on the email side, or, oh, I see a lot more traffic coming from Instagram versus Facebook. Oh, it's maybe a younger demographic, or a lot more traffic comes from Facebook, not Instagram. Again, looking at that. So again, first thing, looking at how are people coming to your website?
I think it's called acquisition now.
Yeah, acquisition. Yeah. And then again, we've even discussed GA4, and that could be a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But at least the UA, the Universal Analytics, for the longest time, just looking again, how people are coming to your site. Is it the organic? Is it maybe a paid campaign? Is it referrals? Again, you're getting those backlinks based off that content you've created over time, and other trusted websites giving you, hey, check out Brett's website.
And it can even show you, I know we talk about Google a lot. It can even show you, like, don't laugh at me, but Bing. There's a lot of people that still use Bing. Whether that is because it's the default search engine when they open up, I think it's called Edge now. Who's using Edge? And we don't go there. But there are other traffic sources that they might not be high volume, but they might be high value. So you got to keep an eye on a lot of different things with traffic sources. One other thing I'll layer on top of that is just keeping a heartbeat on your traffic. So one of the very first things you see when you get into analytics is that jaggedy looking graph where it's got all the spikes and dips. You want to make sure that you are keeping an eye on that, and you can expand. There's a little date selector. You can expand that out farther and see, okay, well, is my traffic trending up? Is it trending down? Is it seasonal? Are there shoulder seasons where you kind of maybe maybe you have a landscaping and plowing business. Well, this time of year, you're not mowing quite as much grass, but you're not plowing snow yet. So just like that, just like a business can be seasonal or have shoulder seasons, your traffic can do the same thing. So as you have a newer site, when you get in the analytics for the very first time and you see that first traffic graph, that's a very good indication of just the health of how your searches, how your website is appearing on searches.
Yeah. And that's a great point to bring up, Brett, is looking at that. A lot of businesses know if they are a seasonal business, you're a snowplow. Obviously, if you're living in a place where it only snows a certain time of year, you only get traffic a certain time. But it's also important to say on that topic, all the stuff we discussed earlier, doing that in the off season, maybe it's a little bit slow, picking the brain of another employee.
It's a great time to
build that content. So that way, whenever those search queries start coming back up in Google, you just have a whole heap of new content on your website as it's crawling, as it's searching, as it's indexing your stuff. So that way the new season, whenever you're getting that traffic influx back up,
you did it 6 months ago.
Yeah. And again, it's a little bit over time, and going back to the analytics, slowly but surely, if you go up to the bigger picture, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, as you do this and build this over time, you should see a steady increase. And again, that's where it's like you feel the fruits of your labor. Sometimes it's hard. You just you feel like you're constantly grinding. The B set is content, video content, blog content.
You don't necessarily, while it may be good short term, it's not always the best to see a 10, 20% spike in your traffic in a month. But, and we've talked with, and just in this industry, you see it too. And we've had to talk with our customers a couple of times about this is, I would much rather see a site climb 5-6% traffic gain. That would be huge. 5% month over month is not bad. Especially, it's hard to kind of talk about that with new sites, but gradual change every month over the year, the 2 year mark, the 3 year mark, when you're constantly seeing that layering of 5%, 6-8% in that range, that's indicative of a much healthier site than an instant spike. Because I've seen that where it does this and then it'll curtail back off. So it is a tortoise in the hare race. You want to be the tortoise, even though that might, in the business sense, be a little bit painful, but it's kind of some sweat equity with SEO. So you don't need to pay for it. You don't need to do AdWords for that part. Like some people think it's a pay to play thing. Like, well, if I do more AdWords, I'll rank higher. You don't have to. And we can talk about AdWords a different day, but to kind of summarize this, answering questions, making sure that I think if you're starting out with this, utilizing a tool like Yoast, and there's a couple others, we can link to some in the show description. Using some of these tools to make sure that you're turning that little light green on your pages, and just being genuine, writing original content that answers your customers' questions and covers some towns, basic keywords for products or services. And it's not hard to find or navigate on your website. That's kind of like the main crux of SEO.
If you distill all that down, that's pretty much what the source of it is just, again, make sure your sites, especially nowadays, we didn't mention it, but we'll throw it in there too. A lot of times we'll look at website traffic on Google Analytics, and you can look at by device. More often than not, majority of websites nowadays are mobile. We all have our cell phones. We're scrolling. Again, to make sure you're optimized for mobile.
You don't want to have to pinch
and drag.
Zoom.
Again, Google will put that more on the technical side of it. But again, that's important to note there. But at the end of the day, if you do those basics over time, again, it's the long game.
It's a long game.
It's a marathon. Not a sprint. But over time.
I hate to use that quote, but I was gonna say it's like a game of inches. You don't want to always. You don't need to get a foot farther every time. If you're every day, you're getting a little bit, like an inch farther, bit by bit. Over the years, your site will. It will rank.
Exactly. So.
Right.
Feel free to, I will say this, if you have any questions, you're watching this on a YouTube video, drop a question below. Maybe that's a future video we're asking, hey, you guys mentioned about this. Can you discuss this further? We love that type of stuff, not only on this, but other podcasts we do. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and hopefully you find the links that we'll post in the show notes below valuable. So
and I think next time we'll dive into a couple of more like niche versions or niche topics we skimmed over today. There's SEO is just, it's a canyon It's
Yes.
a huge canyon. It's
Yes.
Grand Canyon sized topic. And we
Yep.
are trying to just cut it into slivers for everyone. So we're trying to just start from the beginning and we'll work our way down and do more complicated topics. Maybe next time too, we can have Ben and
Yes.
Nancy come on
Perfect.
and just talk about basically just mobile friendliness and,
Yes.
and how difficult that is,
Mhm.
especially in a modern day where you have 10,000 devices. I know
Yeah.
we've run into problems. We don't need to go into them.
Yeah.
With the number of different device sizes,
Mhm.
it's important to make sure that you're covering them all, making
Yeah.
sure the site works well. Nothing's more frustrating than a site that it might have all the answers you need, but doesn't have the mobile friendliness. So maybe
Yep.
next time we'll cover how to make sure your site is mobile friendly and how to check it.
Perfect.
So, all right.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for tuning in. We'll have Tyler on again. I think he did pretty good.
Awesome.
So, all right. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Thanks.